So today we're going to jump into a really famous and honestly powerful argument that has shaped a lot of thinking over the centuries. We're going to use an academic analysis to basically act as our guide, to deconstruct it, piece by piece. We're going to look at its structure, its logic, and its core claims to see exactly how this thing is built.
Okay, so where does this all start? Well, the analysis we're looking at points to this crucial beginning. The whole argument is framed by two parallel ideas, two revelations. On one side, you have the revelation of God's righteousness. That's presented as the solution. But before you can appreciate a solution, you have to understand the problem. And that's the other side, the revelation of God's wrath. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're just going to follow the argument's own logic, breaking it down into 5 parts. We'll start with that two-sided revelation, then get into the central charge, look at the evidence it presents, see the consequences that follow, and then finally wrap up with a verdict and the whole point of the argument.
So you might be asking, why start on such a dark note? Why kick things off with wrath? Well, the analysis suggests this is a very deliberate rhetorical move. By establishing the reality of divine judgment right up front, the argument really hammers home a sense of urgency. It shows exactly why the solution, what the text calls the gospel, or good news, is so desperately needed in the first place. And here's where it gets really cool, linguistically speaking. The source points out that the exact same Greek verb, apokalyptetai, is used for both. It describes how both righteousness and wrath are revealed. Now, that's no accident. It's a really powerful way to forge a direct link, tying the problem and the solution together from the very first sentence. All right, so that brings us to the core of it all, the central charge. After setting the stage, the argument makes this really bold claim about what the fundamental human problem actually is. And, it's not about what people don't know. It's about what they do with what they do know. And there it is. This is the accusation that drives the entire argument. The claim is that truth isn't just missing, it's being actively resisted. And that word suppress, as our analysis points out, is absolutely key here. Yeah, the analysis makes this super clear. The Greek word here, katako, doesn't mean just being unaware or ignorant. Think of it like actively holding a beach ball underwater. It takes effort. It's a willful choice to hold something down, to restrain it. So the problem isn't a lack of information, it's an act of opposition. Okay, so if the charge is that people are actively suppressing the truth, you gotta ask, right? On what grounds? You can't really be blamed for suppressing something you have no access to. So what's the evidence the argument brings to the table? Well, the argument's answer is that the information isn't secret. It's not hidden away in some vault. It's been made plain, available to everyone. And this right here, this sets up a fascinating paradox. And here is that paradox, laid out perfectly. The argument claims that the things you can't see about God, his eternal power, his divine nature, are actually made visible. And how? Well, they're understood through the world he created. The created world itself is like a standing testimony, a kind of undeniable evidence. So, because this evidence is presented as being plain, universal, and just there, the argument draws a sharp conclusion. There's no valid defense. There's no way to say, I didn't know. The verdict on this section is that humanity is left completely without excuse. Okay, so what happens next? What are the consequences of this suppression? According to our source material, it's not just a single event. It's more like a downward spiral, a predictable chain reaction that follows from that first choice to hold down the truth. You can see how this cascades, right? It all starts with a failure of worship, knowing God but not responding with honor or thanks. That leads to an intellectual decay where thinking becomes empty, then comes spiritual decay, darkened hearts. From there, a profound self-deception kicks in, claiming to be wise while actually becoming foolish. And it all ends in that final devastating act, idolatry, exchanging God's glory for images. And that final step, that great exchange, is really the climax of the whole argument. This is where we see the final verdict and get to the ultimate point that this has all been building toward. So check out these trade-offs. Our source highlights them to show the core failure. The argument is basically framed as a series of these great exchanges. And when you lay them out like this, it's pretty stark. In every case, something of infinite value, truth, an incorruptible God, divine wisdom, is traded away for its finite, distorted, and inferior copy. So what's the big takeaway? At the end of the day, the analysis suggests this whole carefully built argument is a diagnosis. It's designed to show that the root problem isn't that people are missing a few facts. No, the problem is a broken relationship. It's a worship deficit, not an information deficit. And see, diagnosing the problem that way is meant to set the stage for universal solution. It leaves us with this final, really provocative question to think about. If the issue isn't just missing information, but a fundamental problem with rushship, well, what kind of cure does that need? You can't just throw more data at it, right? It implies that a totally different kind of solution is required.